Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us today. I am Valora, the Efficiency Navigator at Sustain Dane, and this is our Live Forward Award panel at our 2021 Sustain Dane Summit. So as the moderator for these, I just wanted to let you know that the Live Forward Awards acknowledge change makers and inclusive leaders who are promoting local sustainability and community well-being, especially within Dane County. So with this year's theme of weaving stories of change, I really hope that you will all find this year's awardees, of which we have four, all of their insight and lived experiences to be both informative and inspiring in regards to their transformational efforts. And so we're just so excited to honor all of this year's passionate nominees and awardees. This year, we actually received 21 outstanding nominations from local community members. And so now we're going to just take the time to share a video highlighting all of the nominees, all the nominations we received, as well as our four awardees who you see here up on the screen today. And then after that, we'll launch into our panel conversation. Oops, hang on. Just got to get this video, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, thank you so much. Congratulations and welcome to our 2021 Live Forward Award awardees. We've got Elena Terry, Oscar Morales, Christy Goforth, and Tara Wilhelmi. It's just a pleasure to have you here with us today for our panel discussion on LFA. And I wanted to start us off with introductions. So if you guys could all go around and please share a bit about yourself and your work. I'd love for Elena to start.
Right. Well, first of all, congratulations, everyone. It's so inspiring. I get a little choked up seeing the work that's being done. So give me just a second. Hello, everyone. My name's Elena Terry. I'm the executive chef and founder of Wild Berries. I'm a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation and do a lot of work in the Madison-Dane County area. I went to school at MATC, so I'm an alum from there. I do a lot of advocacy with sustainable agriculture and really building community around that. So I have partnerships with the Intertribal Agriculture Council, the American Indian Foods Program, the UW, and several tribal farms to help that effort. So it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much. I'm very honored.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tara.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara Wilhelmy. I am the CEO and lead peer support specialist at my organization, EATO, EOTO. I have a for-profit arm that provides direct service, which is EATO CPS, and then I am fiscally sponsored by the Center for Community Stewardship, which allows me to act as a nonprofit and do community programming under the umbrella of EATO Culturally Rooted. I'm a certified peer support specialist as well as a certified parent peer support specialist, and I also do training at a state level for peer support as well as recruitment and diversity and equity work. I could probably say some more stuff, but that sums it up in a nice bucket right now.
All right, go right ahead, Christy.
All right. Thank you so much for having me here today. And congratulations, everyone. I'm really excited to learn more about each of you as well. And I just want to give a shout out to Sustain Dane for your awesome work in our community. You're really doing some important stuff, and just want to let you know that I appreciate your work. I'm going into my second year as the executive director of Free Bikes for Kids Madison. Free Bikes for Kids is an organization that gives away about 2,000 bikes each year to low income and diverse communities in Dane County. We're working in the transportation equity space, and we're trying to make that activity more inclusive and easily accessible. It's typically a high point cost of entry, so it can often be a barrier for people to have bicycles. I'm also a member of the Sioux Tribe of Chippewa Indians and based out of Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. In 2019, I was elected to Monona City Council, and in that capacity, I serve on our Plan Commission, our Public Transit Commission, our Landmarks Commission, and our DEI Committee. I was appointed as a Dane County Parks Commissioner in 2020, and I'm just really honored to be here today, and I thank you so much for including me. Thanks.
Thank you for that shout out. All right, Oscar, if you want to unmute.
Yes, my name is Oscar Mireles. I am here in a thrift store in Fredericksburg, Texas. So hopefully the internet will continue and I can be here the whole time. First of all, I'm honored to be here with my good friend Christy, and I've been from afar seeing the work of Tara and Elena. So it's wonderful to be among strong women leadership. I think it's been here for a long time, but not often recognized. I've served here as executive director of Omega School for the past 28 years. And I've had a wonderful board and staff and core volunteers and just amazing students. So during my tenure, we've helped thousands of students earn their GED credential and be in a position to move on, because that's a key access point to move on with their life, whether it's post-secondary education, apprenticeship, or entry-level employment. I also have the pleasure of serving on a lot of nonprofit boards, including the Overture Center for the Arts, MOMOCA, and the Madison Symphony, as well as the Boys and Girls Club. I'm also the executive director of Loud, Latinos Organizing for Understanding and Development, and we just hosted a conference on Latino art. So thank you, Sustain Dane, for your efforts to support for understanding how locally together we can make a difference in Dane County.
Thank you so much for joining us from Texas. So yeah, I guess, we want to get started right away. And I just want to start off really by sort of highlighting the work that you've already mentioned. So Tara, what is it that you enjoy the most about your work?
Yeah, I would say what I enjoy most about my work is making connections. So, growing my own network, but also connecting people within it. So, I love to have a conversation with someone, hear them talking about an effort, an idea, a resource, and 2 days later find somebody who could benefit or help impact that and connecting them. So, that's my first part. And then, watching others step into their success, those aha moments when I'm doing a training, when somebody really starts to grasp it, and that excitement that comes with learning, those moments when other women and men in my community and leadership step into their groove, what I'll call it. So those are the two things that I enjoy the most, is those connections and then watching other folks step into their purpose and their passions.
Yeah, definitely. And, we acknowledge, the reason you're here is because you have had such success and impact, but along their way, there must have been obstacles. And so I guess I'm just curious, what's an example of an obstacle that you've overcome or how you approach that challenge? And if we could start with Christy, that'd be great.
All right. Yeah. I think the thing that comes to mind most for me is just name recognition and getting our voice out there in a crowded nonprofit marketplace here in Dane County. We have over 3,000 nonprofits organizations in Dane County, all vying for funding and a little, time and effort from lots of volunteers as well. So I think that is, we're all offering exceptional services. Our services are all in demand, but it's a lot of pressure on a rather small population of residents and businesses. And I think, fundraising goes along with that. We're always chasing the next grant, kind of can feel like we're on a hamster wheel and, not sure if that funding is going to come through to fully, help our programs operate. I would say a big positive for us in that for Free Bikes for Kids is I'm the only year-round employee. And so in that, a small donation, which even $100 donation has major impact on our recipients. That allows us to give the full bike package to our recipients, which would be a bicycle, a helmet, a headlight, a taillight, a lock, and it covers the staff time of running our program. So that's the nice positive of having a small operation.
And what about you, Elena? How have you overcome sort of the obstacles that you have faced?
I think that's a question that changes by the day. And for me, it's incredible to be able to work on building community and taking down some of these prejudices and these walls that we have to face. Even the fact that we're able to have some of the conversations that we have, and that we are being welcomed into the community in so many different ways, from agriculture to catering, that it's incredible for us to be able to represent ourselves in a way that benefits our spirit and the place that we're at, also in growth and in establishing space. So I think it varies, the obstacles, but it's incredible to be able to conquer some of those and to, show others that it can be done, and it can be done by, anybody that really has the desire to do that kind of work.
Yeah, especially as another local and smaller nonprofit.
Yes.
And so I guess speaking of, sorry, Oscar, were you jumping in there?
Well, yeah, I think the question was what kind of obstacles. I think, as I'm entering the tail end of my career, you always think, what happens to the next generation? I think we found that each generation needs a fight for their civil rights, fight for whether it's voting rights or the rights of women. I think I'm inspired to see younger leaders like Elena and Christy kind of here to kind of carry the torch. So I feel more feeling better about being able to kind of move on and pass the baton. I think often us in the boomer generation have not always recognized it's time to really extend our leadership and provide space for others to lean in.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Tara's been doing incredible work, in terms of, holding that torch actually. The state of Wisconsin only really began tracking demographics of peer-to-peer certification because of your work, Tara, which is pretty incredible. So I guess sort of, I was wondering how you were able to spark change on a governmental state level, since that is so difficult. Just kind of wanted to hear about what the journey was like.
Yeah, well, so I guess I have a little bit of an easy road, and I don't want to say that to take away, but I know that I've witnessed year-long struggles of advocacy around topics, and I was blessed to have receptive ears. So when I came into peer support a couple years ago, as a woman of color, as a black woman, my first kind of thought was, where are the rest of us? Where can I get with my community and other peer support specialists who identify this way? And when I went to the state program, they said, there's some, but we don't really know where they are. And no, there's not data or a mail list. And so I was like, well, what do I need to do to start organizing that? And so it was really just my busybodiness that started it out. But they were receptive to conversations. So for me, it was a lot of honest and brave, authentic conversations, bringing up topics that I know make folks uncomfortable, and having a conversation that led to empathy, or a lot of times, a lot of nodding heads. People were like, yeah, I needed somebody to say that. I didn't know if it was my place as a white identifying person to say that. So there was some of that happened. But I had receptive ears. I did a lot of networking and advocacy. Every place that I showed up, I talked about it. I continue to talk about it. My goal wasn't short term of just having the data. The data was a means to an end. My goal is still remains diversifying the peer support workforce. And so I believe that peer support and just relying upon folks with lived experience to find solutions and support and recovery is huge. It's one of the biggest things I saw missing from traditional provider supports and nonprofit spaces. And so in order to get there, I said, well, first I need to find out who's here and how do I access and connect with them. And so it was low-hanging fruit in an uncomfortable space. A lot of times when we ask white-led systems to make change, it's met with a feeling of defensiveness, an explanation of what issues and policies have already been tried. And I was lucky to say, we know that the workforce isn't diverse enough. You're saying that you agree it needs to be diversified, and this is a tool that I need to do the work in the state to support that. And I'm willing to do the work. I just need the support. And really, that was the kind of the founding of it. And I was like, again, I was lucky enough to have people who said pretty much, here's the money, put your mouth and your feet to the right. Like, if you're gonna squeak, then take the action, and here's the opportunity. And so I was able to contract with the state and make those changes, and folks saw it, saw the impact that just one old person having that intention made, and they have agreed to continue the work and to scale it up.
Yeah, I mean, even though you do describe this as, a receptive audience, it still does take a lot of effort to, be able to have that, and have the action behind what you're, asking for. So I still commend you. I don't think that, that's an easy path, when you accomplish so much. And I do want to recognize, we can sort of follow back and circle back to that, but I do want to recognize that Oscar is going to be leaving in 5 minutes. And so I just wanted to sort of really quickly, Oscar, ask you about how, your work with Omega School and Adelante Madison has had really tangible impacts. You can look at the numbers and see the change that's happening in the community. And so if you wanted to share maybe, one impact that you're the most proud of, and sort of advice that you have to those, especially young leaders that are not seeing such immediate results for all their efforts.
I think the main lesson I've learned is deciding early on to be around for the long haul. Coming from a family of 13 brothers and sisters, I learned that I wasn't going to win each battle. I wasn't going to win each fight and win each argument. So I had to think and pivot and figure out, how do I maintain relationships even though we're going to have disagreements along the way. And I think I've seen a lot of young people get involved, get engaged, and then kind of get turned off by one bad experience or working with a nonprofit that kind of wasn't going their way, or an issue, and just learning that if you stick around for the long haul, those are the true leaders, because it's easy to get involved in one issue on one thing. It's hard to kind of sustain that leadership. But that's the true leaders, are the people that have been there. And here in Madison, we have a lot of, John Gramling, for example, the Capital City Hughes, Gloria Reyes, who inspired people to start Adelante, Juan Jose Lopez, school board member, Michael Johnson, Alex G, people who've been here for the long haul. So while we don't agree on every issue, we do agree that we're here for the betterment of Dane County, and that we're going to continue to work forward to make that happen. So sorry, I got to sign off. So thank you for the award.
Thank you so much for everything you do for Dane County, Oscar, and all of your work. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on your being an awardee this year. All righty. So Oscar, really brought up, Madison, which made me really think about how, we think of Madison as a rather green sort of bubble in the Midwest, sort of a big biking city was, mentioned even earlier today, with a lot of bike paths. And so, we do, I think there's a habit to sort of lean towards conceptualizing that as, biking as accessible, at least comparatively to cars. And so I do want to highlight, that clearly isn't the case for many Madisonians or, people worldwide, really. And so I guess my question to you, Christy, is sort of what do you think contributes to that inequity?
Oh, yes, lots of things. Thank you for the question. I would say, like, the most substantial challenge that the people we serve here in Madison, it's transportation. And transportation is a basic need, but it's just not very accessible. Our past governor, he basically, eliminated RTAs, or regional transit authorities, from state statutes. And that resulted in our public transit systems being more fragile and unstable. And there are locations within the city of Madison where you might just want to be taking a bus to get across town, and it could take you 2 hours. Unfortunately, a lot of those locations are the low-income neighborhoods, so they have the least amount of access to transportation. Really, why is that? It actually probably is residual effects of redlining, which that was just made illegal in 1968, which really wasn't that long ago. And so if you were to take those maps and overlay them with the maps of Madison today, you would see a lot of similarities. Actually, they're very much the same. And so, one thing that's important to know about our program is that we aren't just giving bikes to kids. Our name is a bit of a misnomer. The pandemic really forced our hand in this, which was great. It's one of those, in every challenge lies an opportunity. And we worked hard last year to make sure we were giving bicycles to entry-level essential workers, because as things shut down, they still had to get to work, but there was no bus system, or, all of those things were less accessible. So we started working with organizations like the Road Home, who serves the homeless population, or the Literacy Network. And those really, that really helped us get more bikes into the community. Having these challenges of not having a regional transit authority, it leaves communities on their own to figure out these transit solutions. And so a city like Monona, we're 8,161 people now, we have to try to fit in a public transit system within our already very tight budget. And so as a result, it's leaving a lot of people without access. I want to make sure, though, to state that housing and transit are inextricably linked. So I would say it with me 3 times. Housing and transit are inextricably linked. Housing and transit are inextricably linked. And so low-income housing often doesn't provide for safe and secure bike storage. It doesn't have underground parking. Low-income neighborhoods are often left with the longest commute times, as I said. And it's kind of a function of how local governments work. We have one committee working over here on housing. We have another committee working over here on transit. And sometimes it's like the left hand and the right hand don't know what's happening. And so we really do need to innovate better systems, better ways. So those housing and transit solutions are coming forward together. I think that's really important, and it's really actually pretty doable. Especially at least in a smaller city like Monona, that's something we can do because I sit on our plan commission and I sit on our transit commission, and so I'm the only one that is in that position. So it's on me. It's on me to bring those conversations forward, and I'm doing my best to step up to that challenge.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for doing that work. Somebody has to do it. And I definitely appreciate, the historical analysis there and all that always brings to the table. But I do think, sort of looking towards the future, I'm curious about the impact of climate change, what it has on the communities that you serve, and what it sort of means to the people you work with. And I guess really the key takeaway of that would be sort of how do we build a more resilient and environmentally just community for everyone? So Elena, I think you'd be a great person to start us off with that.
Yes. So climate change is so large. And when you hear those words, it seems like a mountain you would never be able to climb. But realistically, we all have this incredible power for change in our own spaces that we occupy, and making small changes end up being huge waves of difference. So the fact that we're even more aware and we're acknowledging that it's an issue right now is huge. It's a huge step forward, and really being able to put that education out there that this is something that's rapidly changing. It's not, oh, maybe in 3 generations. This is something that we've really moved along rapidly in the past, 20 years, significantly, really since the Industrial Revolution. But in the past 20 years, we've really felt the effects of it. And so what can we do to reclaim that space, to recognize our responsibilities as stewards of the land, to open our eyes and see that change can be made if we do it, if we do it. We are the ones that have to make that change. And I really think that some of those behaviors are learned. So leading by example is significant, and really addressing the issues on a community level, on a national level, and then really acknowledging that it's going to take all of us to be able to make the change that we need to make to maintain this, space that we call Earth now.
Yeah, and a little bit about how do we find that role, right? So, does anyone else have anything to add to that? Christy, maybe you want to go?
Sure. Yeah. When I think about climate change, I think about how does that impact the families that we give bikes to? It's increased energy costs, increased food costs, cost of living, those all affect the people we serve so greatly. And all of those things can lead to housing instability and food instability. And while we might not be in a state that is on the news every week for natural disasters, we have seen our fair share. We've seen flooding here in our community. We've seen wildfires up north. We've seen unpredictable shifts in lake levels here locally and in the Great Lakes. So the thing about climate change is, though, I'm serving the people that I see is almost on the bottom tier of society, right? These people who are, hungry, not sure if they're going to have housing in the future. If a minor healthcare issue comes forward for them, it can be devastating. And so the more wealth a person has, the more capacity they have to adapt to climate change, right? And our recipients just have far less capacity to absorb these costs and these impacts. So it definitely impacts every area of their life.
Yeah, and definitely having, less resources to deal with those consequences is really, core environmental justice there. So, yeah, definitely appreciate, we don't often think of Wisconsin, maybe like you said, in that sort of context, but, a lot of our farm runoff goes, down the Mississippi to the Gulf. So it's always good to keep in mind. And Tara, did you have anything you wanted to just tack on? Some great comments here from you guys.
I guess I just really want to echo what both of my fellow panelists said, right? Elena brought forth the idea about education. When I think about the families I serve and my peers, the folks that I am engaged with on a personal level, I think in our community, we are so caught up often in the daily struggle, the trauma that we're trying to heal while there's ongoing trauma, the disparities, all of these things, right? Just the basic fundamental, how do I get my kids and my family through the week? And yet, I recognize that when there's a loser, right? When what Christy brought up about wealth and access to solutions, right? Organic foods, all these things that we know we need to do. Agricultural farming plots. I live in an area where it's definitely encouraged. I live in one of those areas where I see that there's a consciousness, and if I wanted to have a compost bin, I don't have space for that. If I wanted to grow my own vegetables, there's not a space for that. I'm lucky that I'm connected to Badger Rock and the rooted community, so I do have access to urban agriculture, and I know folks in my community who are thinking about that and also thinking about how do we get back to our indigenous roots as Black folks and farmers and agriculture. But then I also think about folks in Flint. And I think about how we are going to be the brunt bearers of any of the kind of things that come out of this. So as our living air quality decreases, we'll be in areas that are most affected by smog, because those will become the low income areas. Those will be the places that programs start to kind of send our folks, and we kind of know that cycle that will happen. And so for me, it's about education and advocacy, but also as you were talking, I was thinking, where do I find time in my life to think about that too? Even though obviously, if I don't have a quality of air and my earth is depleting around me, that affects all of us. And that's my answer, right? Is like, geez, it's another thing I gotta be focused on. When people talk to me about environment, I'm often thinking not necessarily my agricultural environment, but my living, those fundamental pieces of what I need to have a thriving, healthy life, right? Am I living in a house that is up to par, in a neighborhood that is safe? And so listening to the other panelists, you've helped me to think how I can expand on that. It's obviously something we're all aware of, but I haven't really taken a local stance on that, or even an agency stance on that. So thank you for bringing that topic up.
Yeah, and absolutely. Thank you all, for these. Yeah, go ahead, Christine.
I was just going to chime in a little too, because she hit on some great points. Is, while we all know we're in this housing affordability crisis and we need more workforce housing, oftentimes the locations of that workforce housing, like I mentioned before, and Tara, kind of led to that as well, is the locations are they're just not great. They're not places where you have access. Well, maybe they're on the railroad tracks, so you're being woke up every night with horns going off and things that add to your stress, or in high pollution areas, or areas with low access to transit. And so right now I'm pretty excited about at our city council meeting on Monday, we just approved a general development plan for one of our first affordable housing complexes here in Monona that's not age restricted. And it's on East Broadway. And the thing about it that is so fantastic, it's actually on the Whitehorse property, which is a longtime Ho-Chunk family here in Monona. And it has water access. And so I'm just like, wow, this is just profound, so the children there can grow up fishing. They can just go in their backyard and drop a line in. They can, there's a tunnel under the Beltline, so they can, drop a small fishing boat in, or a canoe or a kayak. Canoeing and kayak and boating in general, those are other, activities that are seen as, typically very elitist and high cost of entry, and not things that people of color get access to unless, they can just walk to the shore somewhere, like you see often by Monona Terrace. So, wonderful. I'm so excited about this development that, is helping people get more access to things that traditionally they haven't been able to access around here.
Yeah, especially with those being so, culturally important to so many groups, which kind of goes into, I think, Elena, your work. And what I think is important is that, you've kind of mentioned that, with your work, you do preserve ancestral farming techniques and sort of heritage varieties of crops. And so, you do seem to draw a lot from the past to sort of inform the future. And I think I'd be interested in knowing sort of, any response you have to, those activities, and their accessibility, but also what you kind of think the most important lesson that you've learned from your ancestors is.
Sure. And I just want to add to what Tara and Christy said. You know, I do a lot of work towards food sovereignty, but that's a dream. Like right now, we're still addressing food security. And I think that during COVID, it has really opened our eyes up to the great difference between our classes and in our communities. And so how do we bridge that? Like it isn't something exclusive to this moment in time either. It's something that we've constantly had to overcome or try to make strides forward in. And so I really think that remembering the things that my ancestors had to endure motivates me to be a better me. You know, like remembering that they had to overcome all of these things and they did it so that I might have a better space. That's one of the teachings that I think is crucial for our continuity, you know, and really saying that I recognize that those struggles existed and that those things existed. And I also recognize that your strength helped us get to this point. Like without the strength of our ancestors and the knowledge and the sharing and the compassion and the intention and the mindfulness and thought that we will need this knowledge now, the only way we can honor that is by continuing that knowledge on and making sure that we're not only preserving that knowledge, but we're reclaiming it on levels that the next generation will be able to feel that strength. You know, I think the thing that I got the most from my elders is to accept myself with grace and the struggles that I have to overcome in this moment in time, you know, and realize that acknowledging that and getting my own strength from it, you know, and from those lessons has really helped me heal. And it goes back to that leading by example. Like if I can do it, we can do it. And we're going to be stronger for that. And in doing that healing and in recognizing, acknowledging those struggles and processing them and showing them next generation how that can be done, even if it's small, like that motion continues on for centuries. So I really feel like because of that motion my ancestors set into place with everything, you know, you can't just look at a food system and say that's, you know, she's a chef. You really have to look at it holistically. And I talk about this, food is medicine. It's a catchphrase across the country. And for me, that's not replicable. Like the medicine is in the process of providing those meals and sharing them. And it's unique to every meal. So I guess I just really accept that to hold myself with grace in my community and to say that small movements make difference. And if there's something that I can clear out of the way for the next generation, like Oscar was saying, we all pass the torch on some level. So what kind of space are we going to leave for the next generation to really progress past us?
That's an excellent response.
That was so beautiful. I'm sorry, I just had to chime in. It was really touching. You know, I'm like, you know, choking back here. I'm gonna power through it now. And just it, you know, it also like just it's so profound that the original stewards of the land, you know, we finally have a seat at the table. You know, that is just so important. And yeah, I'm just grateful to all of you here and thank you for your voices and your work.
I want to bring forth another perspective because for me, this tie to my ancestors, my cultural roots, is a part of the gap in my community. It's part of what I believe at Culturally Rooted. That's where I got the name from. One of the things that I think is fundamental to our healing is creating safe spaces and also this cultural connection. And for people who are known as Black, African American, people who have ties and roots and generations going back to slavery in Africa, you know, we've lost that. It's hard to say what my ancestral roots are. I can have this big idea of Pan-Africanism. And I was blessed with a trip through the YWCA's Amplify program. Myself and other entrepreneurs in Madison went to Kenya, and we were there to learn about entrepreneurial supports, and because of who I am, I'm always going to have a cultural conversation. And we started talking to Kenyans about the perceptions of Black Americans, and we started talking about the concept of coming home to Africa. And I had a very real entrepreneurial young woman tell me, this isn't your home. Kenyans are struggling. You're an American, and basically you need to make it work in America. And we had a great exchange from there, right? This misconception, because what I found is that the same media hype that we're given here in America about Blackness is it translates over globally. And so when you talk to them about their reference points for Black Americans, it was Black Lives Matter, President Obama because of his Kenyan roots, and there was misnomers on gangsterism and aggressive Black women, and kind of all these same misnomers and things that we struggle with here in our identity. But what I took home from that trip was that for an American to come to Kenya was another form of colonialism. Even though we viewed it as coming home and this connection to our roots in Africa, unless I go back and find DNA that proves that I'm a Kenyan, Kenya is not my root, right? And so we have this enlarged version and idea of what it means to be African or Black, yet not knowing if we're Haitian or, right, we could name 1,000 predominantly Black countries and continents, and we don't know what that is, many of us. And for me, it's even deeper because I'm also adopted, and I also have, very clear intersectional, you look at me and people often go, what are you? I get that question, right? And so this concept of being able to connect with my ancestors is ambiguous for me. It's deep, right? It's a feeling. They're there. I'm powered by the strength of my ancestors. But if you ask me now to name them, it would be a struggle for me because those parts of my history have been ripped from me. And it's showing up in our culture. It has shown up in our culture. So for me, I have to look to past generations and like when we came out of slavery, how Black folks came together and created space for us, how we were industrializing, how we had epicenters and cities, we had community, we had entrepreneurism, all these things that we're saying we need now, that I know we need now to thrive. So I think it's beautiful when other cultures who still have that root, who still have those linguistic and food and other roots that they can tap into, have access to it. For me and my community right now, it feels like that's part of the struggle, is identifying what those really mean for us. And then how do we come together around it? But then also thinking about the strength and resilience. I went to Louisiana and I was out in the sun, and anytime I'm in the sun now, I think about my slave ancestors who worked, who gave birth, who did all of these things that I didn't even want to be out there. I needed a fan to just stand, and I thought how we've softened up, and yet how they've passed this resilience on, because I also know there's not a problem out here I can't conquer. And I know that me and my family are going to get through even though everything comes, right? I've gotten this resilience that came from my ancestors and from my creator, I imagine, and also from my struggle. So just a different perspective on that ancestral piece, because for me, Edo really focuses on Kwanzaa and Juneteenth as ways for us to get back into our culture, because those are African American created holidays, because we don't know where that real true past is. And those of us who can draw ancestral lines back, I won't say I'm envious, but I'm proud for them, and I wish that all of us could do that as well.
That's definitely, what we wanted to get from this, those differing perspectives. And I think that's so valuable to really hear. And even the name, Yodo, each one teach one, that's a Black proverb, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It came from literacy. It came from the idea that if an enslaved person learned how to read, they needed to come back and teach others, because being able to read was a fundamental piece of survival and also a search for freedom, right? How do we move forward without education and understanding the language that we're surrounded by? Yeah, absolutely. So Edo does stand for each one, teach one.
Well, I guess, we've got about, 5 minutes left here, and I just kind of want to get closing remarks from you, really tie up everything that we've been talking about, because I think it has been, spanning across subjects, and, that's what's so valuable. But I kind of guess the final question then to each one of you is sort of what's your call to action to the people with us today listening? And I think it'd be great, if we could start with Christy and then go to Tara and then finish off with Elena.
Absolutely. It might sound cliche, but it's just my call to action is just do everything and anything you can do to help slow climate change. We know our recycling system is broken. I recycle a lot, but like, for instance, now our recycling center is not taking plastic bags. Where are those plastic bags going? So I would say just buy less, drive less, grow your own food if you have the space to do so. And container gardening, you can actually grow a lot in a small space. It's really important that the adults in charge have to set aside their own interests and think about the generations to come. It's absolutely of critical importance. And I would say also that, the women I'm up here with are just so impressive, and I admire them. And sometimes when people like us are put in these forums, we get a lot of comments of, oh, I admire you so much. And what I always say to that is, don't just admire us, join us in enacting change. We need your help.
That was great. Thank you, Christy.
I couldn't have got a better segue if I paid you beforehand, Christy. Because my statement, my call to action is it's the time. It's time now to get involved. If you are already involved, then it's time to get connected. And if you're connected, then why aren't we working together, right? Like, essentially, because that's what it's going to take, is many of us coming together. We're not always going to agree. I think Oscar talked about that. But we have to have a general focus on making change and then being that change in action. So that would be it. Just come on, join the fight.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you.
You two this is just such an inspiring panel. Thank you. You always welcome other opinions just to broaden your perspective. And when you say call to action, that's what we need, action. Like, in whatever capacity that it relates to you, everybody is able to make change, right? We can slow down climate change. Individually, we can work together and do small things at home. I think the biggest thing that we can do is saying that, like, I see you and I see the work you're doing, even if it's, picking up litter that as you're walking down the road, there's such small things that you can do to influence. And I wanted to say this, Tara, because I do a lot of work with seeds. And I'm not sure if everybody knows, but Yusuf Bimrella is my sous chef for Wild Berries. And he was able to travel back to Africa and really go on this deep Afro-culinary diaspora tour and find these connections. And when he came back, I was so inspired by his experience. And we were thinking of these seeds that came to our people together and were birthed from this time when slaves were brought and they had to weave these seeds into their hair, but they did because they knew it was that crucial. And when indigenous people were forced nomads, they were moved. And this beautiful set of plants and fruits and vegetables that showed up to nourish us, to get us through that time of real uncertainty. And we relied on each other, as people of color, and how can we help each other through by supporting. And as we were talking about this, an Arikara watermelon showed up with us. Like, somebody gave me 2 of them and we had these seeds from it. And the watermelon came from Africa. It wasn't indigenous to here. And the Arikara people were in that area prior, and they were moved to North Dakota, and this watermelon grew there. And I think that when we open our hearts and our mind to change and really accept that we have that power, those things start showing up. And when I was talking to my friend Venus, who does Alice's Garden in Milwaukee, I said, well, it's not traceable. I don't know how authentic it is. And she said, this story of this seed starts today and where we plant it. And so the authenticity lies in you. and in continuing this and making this story known that, you know, when we stand together, we're stronger, and we can not only survive, but we can shift the tables and start thriving and, you know, getting connected with each other. So I think, yeah, I see you. That's a huge statement. Thank you.
Wow, what a way to, you know, end this panel on such a high note of really no words other than just inspiring. I really wanted to thank you all for, you know, such thoughtful and really, you know, moving answers today. You know, just really appreciate you all engaging with the questions so deeply and sharing, you know, these vulnerable, perhaps, experiences that you had. And so thank you again to all nominees, as well as our awardees here today, for your time, and as well as, you know, for fighting for sustainability in whatever form that may take. We really believe that you truly embody the Sustain Dane belief that, you know, change happens when inspired people take action. And so that's really all we have for our LFA paneling. It concludes our LFA. And so I'm just going to hand this over to Claire to give some closing remarks overall for the summit.
Hello again, everyone. And as Valora said, this concludes the Sustain Dane 2021 Summit. I ask everyone that participated with us today to think about what inspired you and what are your particular skills and talents and passions, and how you could adapt them to increase the sustainability in our community, to increase holistic sustainability. So please, you know, support and protect each other, people and nature, and be the person who says you can do it to yourself and to others. There's been incredible conversation today and reflection. So I encourage you to share what you are taking away with others and continue this going forward into different parts of your day and your life. I look forward to seeing you at 2022 program. Have a nice evening.